Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Qawwali is a spiritual dimension of Islam.
It's the poetry, it's the Sufi message, it's the impulsive improvisational aspect, it's that Sufi message of divine love that fuels the music.
Welcome, friends. Today is a special episode, and the context is around the Sufi devotional ecstatic musical art form of Qawwali, which was invented by the legendary mystic, musician, and polymath Amir Khusrau of the 12th century AD, who is also credited with inventing the musical instrument sitar, if you know about it, and the Hindustani classical music art forms of tarana and ghazal and many other things. So the purpose of this creation was to take the listener into ecstatic and devotional raptures, and it does happen. So in the West here, I discovered an incredible band known as Fanafi Allah, led by Tahir Qawwal, who is the guest today. Tahir is a mystic and musician par excellence. He left Nova Scotia, Canada at the age of 12 to the Himalayas for his spiritual journey. And after being an ascetic for a while, he took a transition to the spiritual musical path and imbibed in the teachings of many musical families in India and particularly in the Pakistan region. And today, this caravan are really carrying the light of this ancient 12th century tradition across the Western Hemisphere. And we did a short, quick interview before Tahir left off to the rest of his tour, for which I'm very grateful. So I hope that you enjoy this intimate conversation. And if you like it, please share it. Thank you very much. And enjoy.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Bismillah.
Thank you, Tahir Bhai. What a wonderful blessing, really, that this is happening. I have bugged you, indeed. It's my honor today to welcome Tahir Bhai, Tahir Qawwal. So welcome, sir.
Thank you. Looking forward to chatting with you, Kenan Bhai.
Yes, thank you. So, well, first of all, maybe just to quickly say our connection. I'm coming from the region of Pakistan and Kashmir. Grew up hearing Qawwali as a kid. Didn't really know the deep significance of it till much later part of my life. And when that significance emerged about a decade ago, I was nonstop listening to Fanafi Allah in my car and the home.
Nice.
And those seeds of the divine names were planted in my heart. Were already there, I would say, through your music and the right timing of my spiritual awakening. Some of those names blossomed. And then later on, I've been at your many concerts and also connected with you through Sama School of Music, which is your school where you teach online as well.
Yeah.
And just to punctuate, just last night you had an incredible concert here at Sebastopol, Northern California. And you are on a world tour right now from Bali, hailing from Bali, Indonesia, along with your crew, which is coming from all over the world. Your caravan of musicians.
Yeah.
So I know that you're a little bit jet lagged, and but it seems like you got a good night's sleep. And I'm so grateful that you agreed to do this in the midst of the rock star life.
No worries.
Yeah, thank you. So where to begin, Tahir, by such a beautiful opportunity? So maybe we begin at the start. What intrigues me of your journey from Canada to the Himalayas, maybe we can do a little brushstroke of how, at a very early age of 14 or 15, you there was a deep spiritual yearning that took you from North America to the Himalayas at a very young age. So what was the spark for that transition?
Yeah, it's a long and fascinating story to try to tune into what it was like in that time, 30 odd years ago. Spark is a good way to put it. I mean, it came from a void, I think, in the life that I had been leading, as a young Nova Scotian, and never quite feeling, I guess, at home or akin to my native culture. There was a restlessness there. It has probably to do with a lot of things like lacking in social skills or a disharmonious family upbringing, things like this. But whatever the case, there was this deep yearning to really find something, like a direction that was very different, that was calling to my heart, and something that would be real to me and my interests and my fascinations in life. So when I was a teenager, there was a lot of that seeking through reading books. I think many of us at that time, before the internet was really a thing in that way, would find solace or connection or direction through reading books. And it's such a peaceful way and reflective way to grow and learn as a younger person. And so spirituality really had a strong call for me. Reading, about Buddhism and Sufism and the Vedic scriptures, and I really would read anything I could find, in the libraries, and that was like my happy place, sitting and reading and marveling at a lot of these different perspectives on philosophy, religion, mysticism, and they were all very inspiring, honestly. Somehow, when I read the translation of the Upanishads, something really clicked there. It felt so akin to that perspective of life and the soul and of the lifestyle of a wandering mendicant, like meditator, yogi, that really captivated me in the way, there's a writing style, there's a style of teaching there that felt really inviting in such a way. And so in that period of learning about all these different religions and traditions, I started studying Sanskrit when I was about 13, back then when my brain was young and flexible. And so I was going to the Gurdwara, the Sikh temple, and also the Mandir, the Hindu temple, and connecting with people there and learning. I started studying from the different priests, the Brahmins that were running the puja, and would wake up really early in the morning and go to their houses respectfully and learn about the Shastras and practice my Sanskrit. And it felt really natural to learn the language, to be able to read and speak. And so that was a deep fascination there with that guidance. And in the Gurdwara, like hearing the Gurbani and also hearing the teachings of Baba Guru Nanak and Kabir Das and Baba Bulle Shah Sahab, all that came through the Gurbani side. So a lot of these elements of tasawwuf, of Sufism, that would later become a big part of my life journey were seated there at the Gurdwara in Nova Scotia, actually. It's also where I started learning music. I
was learning tabla from Hajit Sayan Singh, who was my first guru. But he would also, as well as teaching me tabla bowls and technique, also talk to me about the tradition and the meanings of the kayals, of the bhajans, and of the shabads, all that. So just like little, droplets of water to feed that fascination and interest. And strangely enough, from Nova Scotia is a world away. And, from learning Sanskrit and listening to Indian classical music and learning it myself, I was preparing myself for sannyas already. I knew very quickly that that's the lifestyle I wanted to lead, that of renunciation, celibacy, having no possessions and focusing on meditation and my connection to the divine in that way. It's very introspective, that kind of path. So it's more, less about like seeking out and more seeking in, as you know. So there's a lot of things that happened and a lot of experiences, but I was very well guided in that direction in my own inner world. And so after learning Sanskrit and studying the Shastras for a while, I took sannyas when I was 16. So I left Nova Scotia, and I just have one little joli, like a little side bag, a little man purse with my Shastras in it, and a one-way ticket, and that was that. And so I spent that next 5 years wandering the Himalayas and meditating in caves and doing tapasya from what I had learned from the Shastras, and also, I guess, the company of other sadhus, other sannyasis, living that life with very little was very fascinating, I guess, was very formative character-wise, and it's like a reset of, a deconditioning, I think, to kind of find my own relationship to myself and formulate a perspective of the world and the universe over that time, because of not having so much interaction with people. So it's kind of find oneself in that way, just from solitude and that kind of lifestyle. There's not a lot of responsibilities as far as providing for a family or trying to earn enough wealth to support some kind of lifestyle or to be in like the social dynamics of men and women and all that. So yeah, it was a really formative time.
Yeah, thank you, mashallah. Just hearing you, what comes to mind is awe. On it just seems like a grace, even in Nova Scotia, at the early age of 13, in spite of some of the inner turmoil that you experienced, it seems like there was tremendous grace to put you on a sort of a fast track of even to be in Canada, to be blessed by studying Sanskrit and being in the Gurdwara, and then just quickly jumping you off to the Himalayas. So one thing that comes to mind is the Sikh tradition is very interesting. I don't know too much, but I know that there was an intermix of Persian and the Islamic and the Indian sort of coalescing, and some of the shabad, some of the hymns combine the two, at least the two languages, Sanskrit and Persian.
Yeah.
Persian in there. Do you still carry some of those words, some of those hymns with you? Were they formative in some way?
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole way of approaching mysticism and spirituality and religion is very unique. So it's a really like a mind shift, you could say, because growing up in the West, traditionally there's like I guess it's more self-involved as far as the drive is to be successful outwardly, and in the East, especially like older version of the East, is very introspective and less materialistic. Maybe it's self-involved in a different way in our own relationship to God and the afterlife, or all these different kinds of concepts. So it's really quite a mental shift that happens to understand the way that all these spiritual paths of the East have that kind of similarity. And in the temple or gurdwara, or even through music, you feel like there's this profound reverence and worship for something that's engaging the sadhak, the worshipper, in such a way where they're fully immersed in the awe and reverence for something. And just that state in itself was very appealing and very beautiful, and made me feel like, wow, what are these people worshiping? Where is that reverence going, and who is this, Paramatma or Allah? Or, what is it that's bringing people into that state of reverence and worship that's so beautiful, and meditation, all of that? So that's what I was chasing to try to understand.
Yeah, it's as you're speaking, it just seems I'm reflecting at your past history, and it just seems like there was a clarity in you that connected you with that deeper dimension of seeking. There was no confusion, because I look at my journey and with a lot of people, and it can sometimes takes decades to develop this clarity of what is that we seek. And I don't know if you can ever articulate it, but there is an inner current that somehow connects you, and then you sort of launch with clarity and focus. And I feel that for you, there was this perhaps descent of grace where that clarity somehow was available. Would you resonate with that?
Yeah, and people often feel a little jealous of that, especially that I had that very young in life. That's always been very directed, and I feel really well guided, mystically and magically, I guess, of a one-pointed kind of character in my focus and my direction. I don't really second guess. I guess there's an intuition behind that too that I felt like I've trusted from a young age. That's well developed, and I don't really second guess my choices or what I want in life. And for the most part, that I think serves me well, because I'm able to not be in two minds about things or be diluted in my attention. So I think that's important as an artist, as a seeker.
Wow, yeah. I am grateful to just imbibe in that presence of that intuition, because oftentimes in culture we have a lot of strategies to how to cut things and focus and get to that intuition. But I know also as a spiritual seeker that this is something deeply internal and can't be strategized. I'm sure there are ways to cultivate it, but just to have that, what a blessing.
Yeah, thank you.
So in the Himalayas, as you went, was it? I'm sure it must have been very arduous and difficult at times. Were there initiations or any anecdote that you could share? Were there many initiations, or at what point also did you find music as an important part of your path?
Yeah, the stories are endless. I was actually writing a book about it. I'd love to kind of be able to share this information, because it's quite fascinating. Hopefully I made a bunch of mistakes that will benefit, seekers into the future. Definitely went quite far down some different pathways there of experimentation and exploration. Of course it was arduous, but I think since I hadn't already been involved in the worldly life to such a degree, they say that there's two times when people take sannyas, traditionally, and mostly, of course, it's later in life, but there are people that can take it before having a family and owning property and having a job and all that kind of thing. It's quite rare, but I can understand that, because before one gets entangled in like love stories or family or business such and such, there's like there's an opportunity to be able to turn away from the world before one is too engaged in it or generates too much karma to escape that. So I mean, there's also the element that it's very beautiful in the Himalayas, so it's a very inspiring place to do sadhana. And initiations, I guess all the trial and error along the way is like the initiations. I had hoped to find a guru, you know, and all that. And I think I was just too idealistic and too, you know, into my own perspective of what sannyas was meant to be based on the very old shastras, you know. So, you know, like I said, I kept the company of other sadhus and yogis along the way and visited different yogis in caves and all that, and it was really powerful, but never, you know, got initiated per se. Even though it was what I wanted, I was already kind of living that life and felt pretty well guided in a lot of ways at that time. And as I had said, I had studied music, tabla, for a couple years and been listening to shabads and classicals and records, and so I was already kind of deeply getting cultured to the musical tradition and the devotion within and the artistry in that. On my journey, I did pick up a shruti box, so I was practicing singing based on what I had learned from my first teacher. But because it's a life of renunciation, you can't just, you know, you got to focus on meditation and not the frivolities of, you know, aspirations musically, you know, so it's different. And I had also been initiated into tasawwuf, into Sufism before sannyas, in the Naqshbandi silsila. So there was already this whole experience of practicing Ramadan and zikr and all these elements of Islam and Sufism. My Naqshbandi sheikh, my teacher, is from Djibouti, East Africa, so most of the silsila was parts of Africa from that area. And so there was already like a connection to Sufism, and a lot of guidance from my sheikh, from my teacher, that stuck with me. And there is an ascetic tradition within Sufism also, that of, you know, the fakirs and the dervish. So that was all, you know, elements of inspiration along the way. Though the Upanishad tradition was really what was my main inspiration at that time. But, you know, along the journey of along the road of being a sannyasi, you'd hear other, you know, devotional minstrels singing kabir or bhajans or Sufi songs, and was always really touched and moved, and it always appealed to me, this whole thing of like being a traveling minstrel, you know. But my social skills weren't very developed, being a recluse, you know. But it really appealed to me. It seemed like a really cool thing to do, and that fraternity that they'd have together to create music together and inspire other people with something to offer. When you're just walking around looking enlightened, it's a more subtle thing to try to share with humanity, right? It's subtle things, while music is such a bridge, you know, to pass on a sentiment or a teaching or a feeling or a mood. So after those 5 years of sannyas, it really felt like that's the direction I wanted to take, something that connected me to my fellow human, and a way to share that ishq, that divine love, that, because the yogic path is quite dry, especially, you know, after many years of starving myself and being in solitude. something felt so juicy about the whole musical tradition, devotional music tradition at that point. It really contrasted starkly, and it didn't seem like a big step away from the path that I was already on. And I just had some experiences that were really hardcore, I guess. I think one of the last tapasyas I did was a very, very long fast of about 3 months. And so I got to that point of being very emaciated, and I couldn't actually, walk or do much at that point. I was just in like a constant state of meditation in a cave. So that transition from that, it was near-death experience connected to several other slightly near-death experiences that inspired me to want to choose to live in the world and find my way in it, versus just, I guess, take a mahasamadhi, I guess, for lack of more complex language. So it was a very hard transition going from such a hardcore yogic lifestyle to want to reintegrate into a world where I was learning and sharing what I had learned, and seek experiences that involved, other people along the path, I think.
Wow, there's so much there, Tahir. Well, one of the things that comes to me from the very start, it seems like you were open to multiple pathways, be it Sufism, the Sikh tradition. You mentioned the Upanishads, and so sometimes on the spiritual path, people sort of become dogmatic, or in a good way, are very focused on one path. Now these days, with the internet and perhaps for other reasons, we seem to be entering an age of integration where different pathways are at least available to, on your fingertips, and be more open about it. You, however, seem to have it gotten a few decades ago when you started, and perhaps have a natural openness. Would you say that openness to these different pathways were natural, and you were able to pick and choose? Because it does seem like 3 or 4 pathways were presented to you at that early point.
Yeah, I mean, they're already integrated, like in the Gurbani of the Guru Granth Sahib. Like I said, there's all these elements of tradition, like you said also. And Sufism is very all-embracing as well. And I think before partition of India and Pakistan, all that, the Sufi tradition and the tradition of the Darvesh or the Malang, it was also very connected to the Sannyasis and Jogis. And I'd seen that on my travels. There was Sufi fakirs also as well. Like, they traveled together, and it's very universal. This whole mysticism subject is very universal in that way, because it's less of a religious sort of thing. I mean, there was, when one is young too, we have quite strong opinions of things, of thinking that we know what's up. Maybe I did to some degree, or didn't to some degree. It's hard to really say at this point. But I had some hardcore opinions about things too back then, as we do, and that changed over time. But I like the concept of embracing different perspectives, different apertures into the universe, and different spiritual ideals. A lot of them can coexist, I think, easily. But as you say, to be very, very focused on a path, very disciplined, very directed, sometimes it takes having a strong opinion, which can hopefully not denounce other points of view in the process. It's a very fine line there. So it's a conversation in itself. Like, does somebody who's completely devoted and directed on discipline and path or religion, can they be that focused and into it and one-pointed while still embracing other points of view? It's an interesting edge.
Yeah, I think you said it beautifully, of being one-pointed and yet being open to other perspectives. And as you were saying, as you're sharing your perspective, I'm reflecting on my own life, being I've lived in quite a few countries, but when I was in Kashmir in Pakistan, I found myself in sort of an orthodox, sort of a little bit fanatical Islam where mysticism was missing.
Okay.
But that, of course, the dargahs and stuff were always available. I just, because of my own perhaps karmic path, they were not exposed to me. But in the mainstream, I find that there was a strong dogma, and right now we're in a point in the world here in the West, and also perhaps in India, where there is polarization, and at least sometimes I hear this sort of puritanical idea of Hinduism, only Hinduism in India. But from my own ancestors, what I've heard seems more resonant with what you're sharing of this intermix of the different pathways and not strong preferences of one or the other, and being able to live in harmony. And it seems like you sort of experienced that firsthand in your travels over the Himalayas.
Yeah. I mean, you experience both ways. I mean, it's a very, I guess, beautiful ideal to imagine, somebody's practicing a form of yoga and they meet somebody who's practicing Sufi and be like, oh, what's your path like? Oh, how fascinating. That's sometimes it's like that, and how wonderful to imagine. But it's not easy to be completely devoted on a path. People, humans were meant to suffer and feel confused and lost, and it's all part of the journey. So at the same time, I understand why people have to really self-affirm a lot to stay on their path. And one easy way to do that, and not that it's healthy, is by demeaning other opinions. Be like, this is what we believe, and we don't believe that because that's not true because of such and such a reason. It's a conundrum. Generally, the Sufis are very open-minded and universal and inviting, which is lovely. But yeah, also just the Indian-Pakistan dynamic has always been a thing since I was on both sides of the border a lot in my journeys. You do hear people self-affirming a lot, and to me that is a sign of insecurity in one's belief. It comes across that way because you kind of look past, like, why are they having to keep telling themselves, like, running in? It's kind of like running in a circle of affirming, oh, this is what's the correct thing to believe. The Prophet said this, or Sri Shankaracharya said that, and but I also can empathize with the importance of having the power of a community to affirm one's life path, because humans have a lot of different moods and go through a lot of different experiences that continually challenge their beliefs, and I think that's part of the beautiful design that we're all woven into here. And so I can't say one way or another what is preferential, but I can say that it is, up to everybody to find their pathway back to the divine. And as much as we want to lean on, oh, this is the perfect code, this is the perfect set of instructions and ethical codes to be able to find our way to a state of peace, a state of connection, a state of understanding, I don't think it works quite like that. I think, scriptures and teachings are all really valuable, and having a guru or having a sheikh is so important, but it's really up to ourselves to really find that unique path back to the beloved, back to our divine connection. And that's the the beautiful part of life. It's like a huge it's purpose. It's a giant purpose, especially for those that aren't completely overwhelmed with work and family and such. Like in your case, we have a unique opportunity to really give ourselves to that pathway home, and it's meant to be difficult, and we're meant to feel like we don't quite know the way. humans love mazes and challenges, and these challenges are what motivates us to wake up and do what we do every day. And I don't think you're meant to know that you're going to be able to achieve a certain point of like final realization or moksha or fanafillah. I think it's meant to be a mystery that continually like fishes us and calls us forward, and we see where it takes us.
Yes. Yeah, thank you so much. Really, I'm feeling so deeply what you're sharing. I almost feel like I resonate so deeply with what you're saying. I can't quite catch it. Maybe it's not meant to be caught, but it's almost, you have such a deep, perhaps many lifetimes or deaths, so to speak, that you really, that's what I feel, that integration. It almost feels like you're describing to me a rag. You're singing the rag, and my job is to really catch whatever I can. I can there. Really, that's my experience right now. So I'm grateful for that, and of course, my being here with you is not an accident. I feel like one of the things that you were sharing, that as humans, it's our pain and joy. It's a mix of both, and it's supposed to be like that. And there's nowhere necessarily to get to or transcend. And I'm just wondering, what would you say to that? Would you say that how would you describe our experience as a human here, if there's nowhere to transcend or nowhere to go to? How would one live our life?
Yeah, I think like many things, many aspects of this tapestry of life, this journey, it's a bit of a paradox, because it's important to have a destination to make the journey, right? And there's a certain amount of obsession we have to have with this imagined destination to want to be engaged in the journey, right? But it's really the journey itself where all of the content lies. So we don't want to in my opinion, psych ourselves out of the value of the destination either. So it's this fascinating balance. But I know in my earlier spiritual journey, it was a lot about this imagined destination of this final liberation. And I think that illusion, could almost say it's an illusion, was fueled by a lot of the spiritual books that I was reading. And later, after having all these experiences and feeling disappointed in myself for not arriving at such a destination that was congruent and consistent, I felt resentment towards the writers of these books. Like they weren't being directly honest, but they were but at the same time they were fueling this the power of this destination. Whether it was a real thing or not, it had the effect of making one take the journey. So what can I say if it's like right or wrong? But I can honestly say I felt like resentment towards that, because one realizes as one has experiences and grows up that, wow, God has given us this opportunity to also feel pain and suffering and separation and longing and confusion and feeling lost, and all that is essential part of life. And there's never going to be a point when those what we could call negative elements are not there. So this whole thing of like the autobiography of a yogi or traveling with the Himalayan master, some of these bridging texts that inspired a lot of Westerners to pursue yoga. There was a lot of that. Oh yeah, you got to seek this final destination when you're just sitting in the lotus posture with this white halo of light around you, and everything completely makes sense. And I don't think that's honest. I think it works as a ploy to put people on a path of seeking, but I guess we're all destined to meet that realization on our own, that sometimes you don't feel great, sometimes you do, and sometimes you feel like you've really arrived, and sometimes you feel so lost. And I don't think any human is immune to that. Maybe when we, have enough experiences and our character is well developed, you can accept these things in a different way, on a deeper way, and trust and know that all these states are just important elements to the journey of life. And when you stop avoiding them, like, for example, if somebody's on a path to this like ultimate place of purity or realization or revelation, and you feel really heavy or sad or confused, then it's easy to feel really disappointed in oneself. I definitely did a lot in this. Like, you feel like, oh, how come I'm not like soaring above the clouds all the time in perfect bliss? But after a while, you get used to, okay, this sadness or this feeling of lost is an important piece of the puzzle. It's like part of what fuels the feeling of feeling really blissful and connected. So this flux between pain and pleasure, I think, is an essential part of the path. And as we grow up in our spiritual practice, we start to accept that more. And yeah, you still feel the pain and still feel the confusion, but I think there's a deeper stillness within, which is that trust in God and that love for God, that awe for God, that reverence. Those kind of elements is what helps us through that pain and confusion and suffering. So I think there is a transformation there, but in a way that I'd like to one day maybe help guide through the book or that I'm writing, or through when people ask me like you're doing. I think that acceptance of the pain as well as the pleasure is really important, not to feel guilty or not to feel too hung up on this thing of having this ideal of feeling like perfectly blissful all the time. But the Sufis also really really honor that also, because the teachings are full of that like longing and separation, and sometimes really reveling in it and indulging in that sentiment of separation and yearning for the union with the beloved. They kind of indulge in it in a way too. So
Yeah. Wow. Well, first of all, I would like to say, please write that book.
I think I need some help.
Yeah. Well, everything, Tahir bhai, that you're saying is what I relish on. It's in my own studies of Kashmiri Shaivism and Sufism. I find myself at this point in my life exactly chewing on this paradox that you speak.
Yeah, of course.
So I in a way, I feel goosebumps that I'm having this conversation for you, because it's of course it's so relevant that I received this from you. So thank you for that. It's one way that I've been seeing that is just like as you were describing in your arc, Advaita Vedanta, and that deep desire for transcendence, which perhaps culminated in this near-death experience, which brought me back to the paradox that I'm fully empowered and here by my own choice. And there is that transcendent fire just disappeared, and then it became about figuring how to navigate human life, the very human life, and in the most creative way possible. And it was still full of pain and agony, and new levels of commitment and discipline were required. And for a while I struggled very deeply with this paradox. It's like, I was wanting to reach this place of chill and escape, and here I'm feeling empowered, but to really face my life. And I can't say that I've figured it out. There is just a lighter continuation of the same. And as the last part you were describing with the yogis indulge, I still feel this fire that I tap into again and again. That's there. And I know that there are more depths that I need to have so I can embody more joy and ecstasy and curiosity
in my life. Is there any course correction I need there?
I don't think I'm qualified, but I can say that it's challenging because we want the transcendence. Every human wants it in so many forms. There's a lot of avenues to pursue that. We all do in different ways. We all crave transcendence, and then we all or bliss or joy or happiness, but we also fear the pain. So it's like running in two different directions, you know. As you say, without being brave enough and trusting enough to experience, to really experience the sorrow and the feeling of being lost, then we can't. We're not giving ourselves the width and the scope to be able to experience these states of feeling really found and really full of joy or bliss. You know, I guess like when you read the Dhammapada or more monastic kind of teachings in Buddhism or other, there's this like equanimous kind of state that's being talked about, where you kind of reel it in, so you're not having these really hard hungover experiences or these super blissful. You reach this balance, and that does sound like it kind of makes sense, I guess, if you have the right lifestyle that supports that. If you have a wife, if you have a child, if you have a job, that's not going to work, because when you put in those dynamics, there's always going to be quite a width of experience, right? Quite a spectrum. But I guess if you're just a monk that's being fed oatmeal once a day and you just sit and don't do much, I could see how that could be possible. But the Sufi path is so dramatic and so passionate and so intense. I don't think it's not really akin to that perspective. They like kind of indulging in feeling like such an overwhelming yearning and separation from the beloved that they propelled to have this like moment of feeling like they understand, and the revelation of realization, it fuels that too. So I guess we choose what suits. I think maybe at some point too, people have had so many wild and intense experiences that they maybe crave to be in a more balanced place at some point in their life too. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe they've lived a much more contained life, and at some point they crave more diversity and depth and extremes also. Yeah, it's really relative and personal, I think.
And as you were saying, that pain and sorrow is always there, but there seems like even with your musical background, that there is a refinement in experiencing the same kind of emotional states, and yet having somewhat of a different response and maybe a deeper feeling. So over time, do you think that just like with music, these human states are felt in a different way and are responded to in a different way?
Well, it's also a paradox, because if one is more prepared for suffering, and then the suffering is not going to be as extreme, and you can't get as lost if you're already having your trust in God and being like, yeah, I've been here before, I know this is like the trough of the wave, and soon the crest of the wave is going to come, and the flux is going to turn back on itself. Then one is already protected from deeper levels of sorrow and feeling lost. So yeah, it's hard to say. I think when we're younger, we're also open to much more dynamic experiences because of that. Because when, say, you fall in love and you're so lost in that love and so heartbroken in the early experiences of relationship, you can never quite get hurt that much in the future, because you've already kind of like, you have the scars and you have the reminder of having experienced it before. But there's always new avenues of experience at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, what that brought to my mind is something that I've been feeling is also with musical development, and in parallel spiritual development, is that my heart is more open. So things that I was able to close myself from, like right now with the Israel-Palestine war, even though I don't watch the news, it takes only a little for me to feel a lot more. And where I find myself is, as a seeker, is I can't say no to that pain. I feel like a part of me says, just feel it, you know, however that I live my life, my heart should remain open and be willing to break. I just feel like there's a lot of heartbreak.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm like, game on, sign me up for more. And there is a sadness with that. It's like, oh, this path is not without heartbreak of the human journey.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not without heartbreak. And I guess as we grow from boys to men, we know that all too well from experience. And there's, our conversation today, covers a lot of perspectives, and I think it's seeds of thought and consideration. It's fascinating because we're not proponing one particular path or ideal, but exploring the diversity of spirituality as it is in our lives. So on the subject of like, I want to just be able to accept and, like what you're saying, almost encourage just being able to feel things deeply and not protect oneself from the depth of feeling. That's also a beautiful perspective, and it's one that I think I can understand why it suits your current phase in life. And yet there's also the perspective of, well, when you have a family, or you're leading a music group, or you have to be a father or a husband, there's an element that promotes being stoic also, so that you can be a pillar of stability for a child, or a partner, or a music group, or a community, in a job or whatever. So, both perspectives have their respective value given whatever circumstance that they're in. And Sufis also, I think there is that thing of indulge in the feeling, and let yourself feel sadness, let yourself feel like the compassion for others suffering. And I think that's all very important too. And at the same time, when one is a teacher, you have to be a pillar for other people to be able to lean on, and you can't always break down and fall apart also, as a father or something. So we're given all these different contexts in life to be able to, try, I guess, and experience all these different kind of ways of dealing with certain things. All are valid in their own context, I think.
Yes, totally. Yeah, thank you for highlighting that as well. I remember once I was in a class with you a couple of years ago at your Sama School of Music. You were in Bali and I was in Costa Rica, and I remember you were giving an analogy in music, and you said, you applied it to life with ragas, and you said something to the effect of the many pathways that oftentimes with ragas it's very improvisational, right? And you said in life, when I'm having a conversation with someone or dealing with situations, you took that musical analogy, or maybe it's very natural for you, of discovering different pathways. Is that really very natural for you, or is that at the level of analogy, or has music pervaded in your life in that way, where you are able to see what's the best way, or is there a different pathway to deal with situations?
Yeah, it's there by. I realized it later. I made the connection later. Funny enough, but to elaborate, so in classical Indian music, Khayal, or also Drupad, and also semi-classical like Qawwali. Some of the essential, like, important elements of it is that of improvisation. Khayal itself means imagination in that sense. Like, it's an art music, meaning that it's all about creativity. And Qawwali has that element to a large degree as well, especially, good Qawwali, classical Qawwali, developed Qawwali, Khandani Qawwali. And so the whole idea is to take a theme and like an arrangement and build on that through our own live, genuine, artistic and devotional expression. It's the beauty of the genre, really, for me. And so there's this frame which we use to be able to do that. And the idea is that it's always new and it's always brave. Any creative expression, it's powered by that devotion too, which is cool. It's not just about art, it's about devotion and art together, which I think is very divine. And so it's like one enters into a state of this creative flow, and in that inner world, they're always looking for new and fascinating pathways to try and test and use one's trust and intuition to be guided in those ways. Like the sentiment, the ras of the rag, as well as the devotional sentiment of the piece guide that. And there's so much creative scope. And so that way of thinking, of always wanting to explore new ways and to trust and to be carried by a sentiment and a feeling, definitely translates into life where, people have asked me, for example, about my history with, when I went to the Himalayas and and try to express it in new and more nuanced ways every time, because it's something I've been requested to speak about on podcasts many a time in many a place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I like that feeling, to be able to find, to uncover new ground and explore new perspectives and new ways of talking about these things each time. This element of artistry and creativity, I think that's the way that, the way that our art permeates our lifestyle. We bring it into our lifestyle, how we approach our choices, our ways of thinking, our conversations, all these things. It's an art in that way, where we carry the teachings that we've received through learning music into our lives and become more creative and expressive and more daring and more, impulsive in certain ways. Because, people stick to their script quite typically. I always get frustrated with that, because I'm so into this classical mindset for most of my life of being very creative and kind of a little bit out there at times. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I feel a little bit alone in that, because it's so easy to stick to a particular script as a human, and it's a very comfortable place to have, like, okay, this is my story, this is what I'm into, this is the way I see that, this is the language I use. And it's a very comfortable place, just like maybe like more popular music, where there's just, this is the song and this is how it goes. Maybe it's sung slightly differently based on one's mood, but you can rest assured knowing that you know all the parts, you know all the chord changes, you know all the melodies, and when it stops and starts and how it ends, right? Mm-hmm. While the beauty of life is like not knowing what's going to happen next, and being open to the mystery and being creative in the way that we interact with different elements or the same elements but in a different way. It's what makes life and relationship and everything else really fascinating, to me anyway.
Yeah, what one of the things that I'm hearing from what you just described is that there isn't a separation. This music, creativity, artistry pervades everything, right? And I myself, with martial arts and a little bit with music and conversations, I'm just loving it so much because at some level I feel like they all are connected. There is an underlying thread, and creativity is a big part of that. And I like to join the ranks with you and being a little bit out there.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that. It's easy to be a guru and for that short moment act enlightened, like you have everything together, and then the other 23 hours in a day you can be however you want, you know. That's not a hard act, but to be able to, you know, especially like in my music group, like we're 2 weeks in of being all together, 7 people all the time. And so I think the real telltale sign of the power of our art is how we interact off of the stage as well as on the stage, how we think within our own internal landscape as well. All these elements are like how we integrate our spiritual path and pursuits. It's really important. It's probably a very attractive thing just to like look like you have everything together for that moment, and then for the rest of the day having like meltdowns and this and that, or treating people unkindly. So I think most spiritual paths, especially the Sufis, do say to carry that into your everyday life. And a lot of the metaphors and a lot of the anecdotes are involved in the most simple, describe the most simple elements of life versus some transcendental state on top of a mountaintop. It's like how we interact with people and plants and humans and culture and all that. I like that element, especially I think a lot of the Punjabi Qawwalis are like that. They're very earthy, which I like because it doesn't exalt some kind of transcendental, otherworldly kind of reality. It's very in like the tactile world of existence.
Yeah, wow, so profound in a way. It just invoked in me a few threads, but one of the threads comes back from my childhood, hearing Qawwalis and songs, poetry, Sufi poetry, which is so embedded in the culture. They don't use the word Sufi. When I was going to school,
yeah.
It was part of the curriculum.
Yeah, cool.
Right, and I have to say, Tahir Bhai, that I had a disdain a little bit because I didn't want to do anything with romance in my pre-puberty, preteen times, and but there was something very magnetic at the same time, so I was drawn.
Sure.
So there was this tension, and now that you mentioned that really in that poetry, in that culture, I don't see any mention of exaltation of transcendent states. It was Hir Ranja and Laila Majnu, you know.
Yeah.
And so now it's seen actually coming back from our conversation. I connect the dot of another conversation I recently had with Tenzin Wangyal, who is a lineage holder of the Tibetan Bon tradition. And I was having a conversation about one of my NDEs or near-death experiences. And as he was talking to me, he was just describing his householder life of, being with his son and wife and all the good things, being with his pets, which were there when we were having that conversation. So I was like, I was a little thrown off because I was not expecting that, but I could feel that there was something really profound. And I think it was coming back to that. And so what I absorbed was a commitment to sort of my human life and the divinity of that. And I feel like it's so beautiful that in our conversation, I'm seeing that you're highlighting that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, fascinating. I feel like we could talk all day, but I do have to get to the next show.
Yes.
I feel my group waiting for me there.
Yes.
We'll have to continue this next time.
Yeah. Totally. Thank you so much for making the space for it. I'm so grateful. I feel like part of this conversation has been an initiation for me, and I will continue to absorb what thereby you have shared with me. So maybe to bring some closing notes. You are doing your tour right now, and I'll be sharing the website, and you have a tour coming up in the UK as well. So with these Qawwalis, what is for you, the passion, I don't know if it's a tapasya at this moment, but what is it that you feel like the ripples that are going on to the world, or when people come, they don't know much about Qawwali. With what view should they come and listen?
I guess an open mind, because this tradition is very felt. Like, it's not the most heady. I mean, there's a lot of artistry that can be appreciated from that point of view too. But what we see time and time again, 25 years into learning and performing so much as a life path, people really feel this music. Children, adults, people that understand it, people that are Muslim, people that aren't, people that understand the words or not, music or not. So it's really something to feel. It's like a conduit of this divine love that we've, inherited through our teachers and through being immersed in the tradition for so long. And it's one that doesn't really travel to these lands that we carry it often anymore, unfortunately. So it feels like an important duty to really carry that particular sentiment of Sufism, that particular quality that Qawwali carries it with, which is that of the Indian subcontinent, almost 1,000 years in. So it's really music to feel and let the spirit of it really carry you, and people seem to do that quite naturally. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm always, as I was sharing with you last night, I always find it surprising when people who have no background in this music or culture just have profuse gratitude about just listening to the sound and the sama, the environment that gets created.
It's evoked, yeah.
Yeah. You also have a beautiful documentary that I actually still need to tap in, a 5-part documentary on the Qawwali and Sufi details of this tradition.
Yeah, I recommend it for everyone. It did take us a decade and a half to create, because this tradition of Sufi Qawwali is so amazing, in my opinion. We felt like we had to actually make the first proper documentary about it, so those that are interested could not only understand the history and meaning of it, but really be inside of the tradition, because it's still quite hidden gem in the land of Pakistan. So we spent many years, filming and interviewing like those most intimate Qawwali ceremonies, and the teachers and the Sufis, the ustads, the artists themselves speaking of it. So they really, our unique story as a bunch of Westerners learning it is woven into the storyline because it's a fascinating one, but it's a really well filmed and well recorded experience of the actual tradition itself. Like, nothing like that has ever been done. It's called Qawwali, Music of the Mystics. It's actually an 8-part series on our Sama school site that I recommend for anybody that has a fascination in this tradition, because I'd like them to hear it from our teachers, to learn it that way.
And I've been attended a few courses with you on Sama School of Music, and I have to say that I've been blown away, because I didn't think that it was possible on an online medium to have that level of depth and transmission. So congratulations and thank you on doing such an incredible job. And I highly recommend people who are interested in Qawwali or just Indian classical music. If I could ask one last question, it would be out of your journey in the Himalayas and so far, is there a profound moment coming across a teacher or one of your, you said many NDEs, any profound short story if you could share?
Oh, there are many, but I think we'll have to save that for the next time, because we'll have to unpack it from start to finish. And leave people wanting a little more. Why not? Yeah.
I know that I heard part of a Himalayan story of your near-death experience, and just gave me chills.
Yeah.
I think a lot that you shared was sort of the unpacking, but we'll keep it for the next time. Tahir bhai, thank you so much. I look forward to crossing paths with you in different ways. Yeah, just a lot of gratitude, and yeah, looking forward to weaving together.
Yeah, honored, Kenan bhai. Thanks for having me. Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Khudafiz to
Khudafiz.
everyone. Yes.
Khuda Hafiz.